Welcome. In this 15-minute screencast, we'll be creating a blog application in Ruby on Rails. We'll start off by calling the Rails command, pass blog to it, and that'll generate the necessary files for the initial Rails app. And then we can go there and start up our server. And now we can see if everything's working so far by pointing our web browser to localhost port 3000. And there we go. Looks like it's all working. So in this blog application, we want to have posts. So we can use the script generate scaffold command for creating a post model and controller for managing it. And this will have a title and a body. One of the files that's generated here is a migration file, and this is just a database agnostic way to manage your schema. So here we're just creating a post table with a few columns. So we can run that migration with the rake dbmigrate command, and that will create that posts table. And then we can start up our server. And then we can go to the post URL in our browser to see what the schema generated. As you can see here, we can create new posts and even edit them. Now if we go to our post model, we can just add some validations here. So let's make sure that we have a body and a title. So now let's see what happens if we edit our post and just remove our title. And there we go. It says title can't be blank, add it back, and it works. Now it would be nice if our view was a little bit more presentable, especially the page that lists all of the posts. So let's go back to our code and see what we can do. I'll start in the post show view file, and then instead of doing this here, I'll just paste in some code to render out a post and then just display some action links. So now we just need to do something similar in our index action as well, where we're rendering out multiple posts. But I really want the posts to look the same, so what we can do is move this portion of code into a partial so we can render it in multiple templates. So to create a new partial, we just create a new file in here. Start it with an underscore, we'll call it post, and then just paste that content into here. Now instead of accessing through an instance variable, we'll just access through the local post variable, which will be available to us in this partial. And then back in our show template, we'll just render that partial. And if we just pass our post to it, Rails is smart enough to link it up because we called the partial post. So we'll want to render this partial in our index section as well. Instead of listing a table here, we'll just call partial posts. And that will render for each of the posts in the post array, we'll render that partial. Now if we go back to our browser and reload, there we go. It looks much nicer. And of course there's more we could do here, but let's move on. So far we've only been using the HTML representation of our posts, but what if we want to interact with our application in other ways? Well, all we have to do is append an extension to our URL. So if we call posts.xml, then we'll get the XML representation of our posts, and we can use XML to manage posts entirely. If we take a look at our post controller, we can see how this works. It's just a respond to block which lists the different formats that we accept. So it's really easy to add more with just a single line. So here we've added JSON. And now it's as simple as appending the JSON extension, and there we go. There's our posts in JSON format. So what kind of blog is this that doesn't have a syndicate feed of some kind? So let's make an Atom feed by just responding to the Atom format. And then if we leave it like this, it'll render out a file. So just like the HTML rendered out an HTML version of the file, let's make an index view for Atom. So we just make a new file in here. Let's call it index, which is the name of our action, Atom, which is the format, and then whatever template language we want to use. We could use ERB here, but let's use Builder because it's really great for building XML files. Then we just add a bit of code here to generate an Atom feed, which basically just loops through all the posts and makes a new Atom feed entry for each one. Now if we call our post URL again with our Atom extension, there we go, there's our Atom feed. Now we can go to our post layout file, and inside of the head here, just add a bit of code for inserting an auto discovery link tag for linking to our Atom feed. Now if we reload our site again, and we can see we now have an RSS feed link here, which takes us to our Atom feed. Very nice. But right now when someone goes here, they can edit our posts and insert nasty stuff into here, and we don't want that. So let's protect this with some basic authentication. Well, back inside of our post controller, we can inject some behavior using a before filter. Let's call it authenticate. So this way we can change the behavior before a given action is called. So we want everything authenticated except the index and show actions. So we can insert that authenticate method down here at the bottom. Let's make it private. so it's not considered a public action, and just make that method called authenticate. And here we can add some code in to do a HTTP basic authentication just to ensure that the name is admin and the password is secret. And so if this fails, then the user won't be able to continue on with the action. So now if we attempt to edit this post again, we get an authentication dialog, type it in, and there we go. Now we can continue on. Let's try editing and see if it works. And there we go. Only admins can edit. Now wouldn't it be nice if others could add some comments to this post? So again here, let's use the script generate scaffold command to create a comment model in controller. And we'll give it a post ID column, which will be used to determine which given post this comment belongs to. And we can give it a body to display some text. And don't forget to run the migrations with dbmigrate to generate that new comments table. So now we have two models, comment and post, and these two need to be associated. So if we go to a post, we can say it has many comments. And then going to comment, we could just say it belongs to post. And that will use that post ID column in our comments table to link them up. Now we can also set up this association inside of our routes file, saying that posts has many comments. What that did is nest comments under posts inside of our URL, which we can see by rake, if we call rake routes. Now it's a little bit difficult to see in this small screen, but you can see we have posts, and then we have comments nested under the posts URL. Alright, for a given post page, what we want is to list all the comments for that post and have a form for submitting new comments here. Alright, so we go to the posts show view. This is where we want to list the comments. So let's say comments here, and then add a div with ID of comments. And how about render a partial of post.comments. And this .comments was given to us by when we said has many comments in the post model. We could just call post.comments to reference those. All right, now we can create that comment partial almost just like we did for post. Let's call it comment. And I'll just paste in some code here for basically just rendering out the comment content. All right, and back in our post show action, we also want to have a form here for submitting a new comment. So I'll just paste that in. And so this creates a new form, nests it inside of post for a new comment, and then displays a field for the body. If we go back to our posts page in our browser, we can reload, and there we go. Here's a comments. It would list the comments, but there aren't any currently for this post. And then it has a form for submitting a new comment. Now the form doesn't work yet because we have to set up our comments controller. All right, we can go to our comments controller, and we can see that the scaffold generator created a lot of actions for us already in here, but we're only interested in doing one thing with comments, and that is creating them. So let me just delete everything here and just recreate this by adding a create action into here. So in here I want to do three things. First I want to fetch my post using my post ID parameter, and this is the one I want to build my comment on. So I can call post.comments.build to add a new comment for this post using the comment parameter, which is a hash that the form submits. So that'll set the body for our comment. And then finally just redirect to our post page. All right, now we can give this a try. Let's try creating a comment, submitting that, and it looks like it submitted the form, but our comment isn't being listed on here, so something's not working. It probably isn't being saved to the database or something. So this is a good time to show off our debugger option in Rails. We just go back to our comments controller, pass a debugger line, and then when we start up our server, just pass the debugger option. Now when we try to submit our comment again, the browser will hang because it's waiting for the debugger. So now when we go back to our command line, we can see the debugger is now waiting for us here, so we can see where we are in the code. We can go up in the stack if we wanted to. We can inspect variables if we want. Go back down. And we can even enter an interactive Ruby prompt here. And this will allow us to inject any Ruby code that we want. So we can inspect our comment variable. We can check if it's a new record. And it currently is a new record, so it's not being saved to the database. So let's try saving it and then continuing on from here. And then going back to the browser, we can see that the page finished loading because we continued in our debugger, and then now our comment is actually showing up here because we changed the behavior on the fly at runtime and made our comment save. So we know our comment isn't getting saved in here, but why? Well, it turns out that this build method just builds our comment in memory. It does not actually save it to the database. To save it, we could just pass in create, and that'll actually add our comment to post and save it to the database. So let's just try this one more time. Try submitting our comment, and there we go. Now it all functions properly without using the debugger. Now let's say we wanted to add some AJAX behavior into here when we submit a comment. So instead of reloading the page, it'll actually submit the comment behind the scenes using JavaScript and update the necessary segments of the page instantly. Well, Rails makes that really easy. The first step we need to do is just include the necessary JavaScript files in our layout file. Do that with JavaScript include tag all to load all of them up. Next, we need to change our comment form so that it submits it through AJAX. It's very simple, just change form 4 to remote form 4. And then finally, we need to change our comments controller so that it responds to the JavaScript. We could do that with a respond to block. And again, here we want to respond to HTML and just do that redirect if it's a simple HTML request. If it's JavaScript, we actually want to render a template. We could do that by adding a new template under comments. It's going to be called create.js because we want to respond to JavaScript, and .rjs because it's going to use RJS to render out the template. This is just a way that Rails provides to render JavaScript, to generate JavaScript using Ruby. So in here we want to do 3 different things. We want to insert our comment to the bottom of our comments div, and then we want to highlight it, and then reset our new comment form. Now we can try this out. Let's submit a new comment. And there we go. It inserted the comment, highlighted it, and cleared the form, all without reloading the page using AJAX. Now what happens if the user does not have JavaScript enabled in the web browser? Well, let's try it out. Let's reload the page here, and now try submitting the form. And there it works. It actually reloaded the page, fell back to the old HTML redirect approach where it reloads the page when you submit a comment. So it works with and without JavaScript enabled. Now constantly testing this behavior is a little bit of a pain every time you make a change in the future to your blog to ensure that it always works with and without JavaScript. So Rails encourages you to add automated tests to your application using code. And if we go to our Rails application, we can see that there's a test directory here, and this is generated by Rails for every application. And we already have some tests in here created by the scaffolding. So let's go to our comments controller, for example, and test out our create action behavior with and without JavaScript. But there's already a lot of actions that are tested in here, which remember we removed. So let's remove all those and add some in here ourselves. So we might end up something that looks a little bit like this, where we have 2 separate tests here. One for testing our normal HTML post behavior where we redirect after we create a comment on our post, and then another one that tests to ensure that it renders the RJS template when we do a JavaScript request. Now there are still some tests that we need to fix in our post controller, but for now I'm just going to comment this out so that we can address those later. But right now I just want to focus on our comments controller. All right, now we can run the rake test functionals command to actually run our new controller test that we just added. And as you can see, we have 2 periods here, which means both tests pass and our comments controller is functioning properly. And just to show you what happens when our tests fail, I'll just try renaming this to something which is incorrect. So now we try rerunning our tests again. And as you can see, we have 2 failures because I changed the application so it doesn't work properly. So as you can see, automated tests is a nice way so you don't have to manually go to the browser every time you make a change and test out every page again to make sure it all works. I'd like to conclude this screencast by showing off a killer feature called the console. And what this does is load up your entire Rails environment and give you an interactive Ruby prompt where you can type any code you want and change the behavior and get feedback instantly. So let's say we fetch a post, and then Let's change the title, for example, and then save it. And then if we just reload our post page here, we can see that the title has now changed. So that's a great way to interact with Rails instantly through Ruby. As you can see, Rails makes it easy to make a fully functional web application in very little time. Here we made a blog with some posts, an RSS feed, some comments using Ajax, and even had time for some automated testing. So I hope you found the screencast helpful, and I encourage you to check out Rails for yourself.